Let's go third. So what's Joseph's dilemma here? He's got a big problem going on. Verse 19. But he's hearing this news from Mary, but because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her. It speaks of his character, a righteous man before God. The Amplified says being just, he was a just and upright man. Perfect? No. Was Mary perfect? No. We talked about that last Sunday. She was not perfect either. But he was a God-fearing Jewish man, trying to honor the laws of the Old Covenant as best as he could. Did he believe the Messiah was coming? Yeah. Did he think it was going to be in his household, the Messiah? I'm sure not. But listen to this, and as we think about our lives. So Joseph, he could only see two options in this, because we all know he thought Mary had been unfaithful to him. And how would he think otherwise? You can't blame him. He only saw two options. There was a third option that was God's, but he couldn't see that. So many times when we end up in difficult, impossible situations, we get so focused, we all do it, so focused on how am I ever going to get through this? How are we ever going to get out of this? And we tend to forget about maybe God has a different plan in all of this. And we got to keep that in our minds. What were the two options? One, we read about one, exposing her to public disgrace. And what would that look like? Under the Old Covenant, that would mean he would charge her openly in public court before all as being guilty of adultery. She would have been shamed, as the women certainly were in that day and before. She would have been brought to trial. She would have been convicted guilty in front of all, and her reputation ruined. Now, things, if you go way back, the penalty would have been being stoned to death. Now, that wasn't as common in Jesus' time, although it still did happen, because we know there were a couple times when the Pharisees got so mad at Jesus. Remember, they picked up stones to stone him, and he'd walk right through the midst of the crowd. They couldn't touch him until he allowed them to touch him. Second option, which is what he chose, was to divorce her quietly before 2 or 3 witnesses, write out this private bill of divorce. So did Joseph want either options? No, but that's all he could figure out to do. He loved her. Joseph didn't believe her story. And how would he? He was devastated. He thought she had been unfaithful. He was crushed. But listen to this. I'm going to read part of this probably twice. When Joseph was at his lowest point, probably the